Welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke Podcast. On today's episode, I'm so excited to share that we have Laura King joining us. Laura is a dear friend. We go back many years, and Laura's going to introduce herself here in a minute, but the relationship that Laura and I have are interesting in the sense that I knew Laura before I started going through my spiritual awakening, and the same can be said about Laura. So I knew Laura before she started going through her spiritual awakening, and you know, we're both professionals in the business world, and we've both had to live this experience of going through the awakening process while also maintaining a life in the real world. And today we're going to talk about that topic in depth and essentially how to live life after experiencing an awakening. So with that being said, I'm going to allow Laura to introduce herself to you. So Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it is my sincere pleasure to be here with you and everyone.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. And so Laura, I would be so honored if you would share a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then maybe tell the folks listening in a little bit about your spiritual awakening journey.
Okay, a tall order. So let's say I am many things. I think it's also interesting how we define ourselves. And so many times in the business world, we define ourselves by what we do. And I'm kind of tired of just saying I'm a recruiter, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. I'm me. I'm my soul. I'm Laura King. I am a mother of 4 young boys. I am a wife. I am a sister. I am a lover of all things fitness and self-help. And I am on this journey. And it's amazing. I'm like waking up every morning for the first time. And are all days great? Absolutely not. But you know what they are? They're real. And there's just such a beauty to being able to step away from your situation and see it from another perspective. And so I'm kind of smack dab in kind of figuring out what the next thing for me looks like. We're in a really kind of tough season from the world standpoint. But if your listeners want to know kind of if I have a defined moment of like, that's my awakening moment, I don't have it, Adam. I don't have this, this is the exact moment that I knew. For me, it was a very gradual thing over time that I kept wondering, what is happening? Why am I so intrigued to learn more about myself and to go deeper and to have these reflections? And I guess if I had to put my finger on it, it would be after I found out that I have hearing loss. I have a rare condition called otosclerosis, and the doctors think I've had it for a while, and I didn't actually even realize it until I think it was about two and a half years ago when I realized I couldn't hear very well during meetings at work, and I kept having to turn the volume up when I was listening to things on the television and my phone. And I'm proud to say right now I wear hearing aids, and I wear them proudly. But that summer, I actually took some time off of work, and I was able to be home. At the time, I had 3 boys. Now I have 4 boys. And I think the dark time for me was when I found out I was pregnant with my 4th child, which we were not necessarily planning. And I went to a very dark place for probably a good 6 months. And I had another quote unquote, like reawakening after his birth. So ever since December 23rd, 2019, I have come to experience life in a way that I just pinch myself that I'm able to experience it the way that I am. And I was talking to you the other day, like, how many other people live like this? Like, are we one of very few? I mean, how many people are really awakened, Adam? And that got to our discussion on just, we wonder how many other people are even in, the business world that are awakened, and like, can they proudly have this conversation? Can they, how do they move forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there are a lot of people who are going through the awakening process, or at whatever varying degree, right? And I like to refer to it as living in the spiritual closet, because it is a little weird. I mean, when I say it's weird, it's weird to people who don't understand it. I mean, and frankly, it's weird for those of us who have been going through it for a while too, right? I mean, you just kind of learn to that weird is just the new normal in some way or another. But yeah, it's true. It was interesting. I don't know if you've had this experience, Laura, but when I started going through my awakening, and I'd go into work, I would all of a sudden just start meeting other people who had the same, I shouldn't say same experiences, but were going through something very similar to what I was. Whether, I had a conversation with someone and it came up that oh yeah, well, me too. And then they kind of knew someone else who had the same kind of thing going on, and they would come up to me and say, "Hey, Adam, I heard you're into this and you're into that." And it's like, yeah, I am. And then like all these relationships, and even people who maybe I didn't necessarily have the smoothest relationship with, finding out that they were going through this process, and it really brought us close together. And but I do feel like, I think you're almost at your 6-month mark to what you to your December 23rd date. So there is sort of this, you can't just come out like a baby, right? A baby doesn't come out and all of a sudden they're an adult, right? They don't come out and they're not going to parties, they have to go through this process first when they're born of just getting acclimated to their new environment. And we all have to do that when we go through this experience. And it's part of reconnecting with who we are, is we do need that time, at least I believe, where we're sort of in a cocoon stage where we're just learning and absorbing and falling in love with these new experiences and this new consciousness, if you will, that we have. And then when it's time, when we're ready, we come out, and like a caterpillar that turns into the butterfly, right? I mean, the caterpillar is always the butterfly. It just changes its form. And so I think that's what happens a lot of times with us in the spiritual awakening community, if you will.
I agree. And I think the other piece that I'm able to do now that I never was ever able to do before, and for me it's stressful having all these kids and a job, and my husband works, and we were all living in these close quarters for so long, and I was able to find joy in all that, and I don't know if, and I didn't want to come across to other people like, oh my gosh, I have it all figured out, and it was not the sense of superiority. It was the, like, looking at this time, this pause as a gift. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get stressed out, but somehow I'm able to flip the switch and go back to calm and go back to peace and go back to gratitude fast. Like, I know when I'm slipping away and I can bring myself back to present. Is that how you feel? Is that normal?
It's interesting. I was just talking with somebody else about this the other day too, because, like, I feel so, like, peaceful all the time now and nothing bothers me anymore and I'm good. And is that what you experienced? And I was like, frankly, when I went through my spiritual awakening experience, I wanted to get away from everything in my life at that point in time. I didn't, whether it was my job or, just all the things that I had signed up for that at the time I wasn't really getting much joy out of, all I wanted to do was meditate all day and do energy work and follow my passion of helping other people. And, going into a corporate job, where it's like, okay, well, oh crap, I have to enter my time for the week, or I have to give someone a performance review. Like, none of that interested me anymore. And it was a real struggle. I had a really hard time figuring out where I fit in this world. And I've gotten a lot better at it. I've learned that, and it's been a real learning process for me. But what I've learned is we have to be in the world. We can't be out of it because, those of us, I know, Laura, you're called to, and you do such a phenomenal job at it, but help people and be a light for people, and people are drawn to you, and you have such great influence in your network. And that's really important because people, we're all one. We all share the same soul. We all share this. We're all from the same universe, right? Just we're all made of the same magical fabric of life. We're just here in different forms here on Earth in this incarnation, but the reality is there's no difference between us. We're all the same. And so, as Ram Dass famously says, or famously said, rest in peace, Ram Dass, is, we're all just walking each other home. And in order to do that, we have to be in the world and to really embrace this human life that we have and not live up in the spiritual realm all the time. And so that took a while, though, for me to learn. And it was a really hard lesson. And I still struggle with that sometimes. I really do.
And mine was not exactly the opposite, but because I still have so many very real demands in front of me, for me, it was, oh yeah, I know I need to do that meditating thing, but maybe tomorrow I'll do it. Yeah, okay, I think I have 5 minutes now. Can I do it in 5 minutes, or can I just meditate while I'm taking a walk instead of actually laying down and doing it? And what I came to realize is you do it, like, do what's right for you in the way that makes sense for you. Like, there's not a right way. I mean, I just go around with different mantras in my head throughout the day, like bring the joy, show up with love.
Yes.
Every time I would go into a meeting, I would say, how can I best serve today? How can I best serve today? And like that intentional way of showing up changes everything. And I just want to shout from the rooftop sometimes. I'm like, people, don't you understand? There's a better way. But then I gotta say, Laura, okay, you clearly do not have it all figured out. You see glimpses. You see glimpses of eternity, and like you feel the spirit around you, and you be the light. Blah, 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 blah. But meet people where they're at. So like if there's one leadership lesson I know to be true from my corporate days and, just being in that world is you got to understand where people are to understand how you even talk to them. And some people are just not ready.
Yeah.
And so I'm really good at reading a room. I'm really good at reading people. So I kind of know if, like, is this, like, when is a good time to bring up something, and how can I best ask questions to really understand someone. And to me, like, that's the beauty of, like, almost like bringing the psychology aspect into what we do, and even what you do, Adam, with even managing people. I mean, it's an art form, because there's a difference between management and leadership. And I know we're, like, on a totally different topic here, but I just thought that was something that was like, I finally got it in the last 2 months. I'm like, oh, that's leadership. When people actually want to follow you, and they're not, like, they don't report to you.
Right.
And I'm like, I am a leader of my family. I don't need to lead anyone else. I mean, I need to lead myself. But there's so many amazing leaders around us that don't have it at all in their title.
Yep.
And to me, that was just like it just hit me.
Yeah, I love that quote from Gandhi where he said, "My life is my message," and that when I first started going through my awakening, I was telling everybody everything, right? Like, I'd have lunch with people and I'd be like, "Oh, I did this meditation. I met my spirit guides," and I would just see jaws drop at the table, like, what's wrong with this guy? And he'd have all these, like, "Oh, I had an out of body experience," or "I had this happen," or "I had that happen," and it's interesting because now I don't necessarily feel as inclined to have those conversations with people. And it's not that having those conversations was the wrong thing to do, because that's just where I was in my journey, and that's what I needed to do at that point. I don't judge that, part of my life, but we're all on a journey, and we have to live our lives in the moment, in terms of where we are. And so, for me, I've just found that I just try to live my life in a way, if somebody's going through a struggle, or, they come to me with an issue that they're having, I just try and love them, and not try, but I just love them unconditionally and just accept them. And if there's a tidbit of knowledge I can share from my own experience that can help, I'll try to use those words or use those stories or metaphors. But I really just try to live my life, in a way that gives honor to Mother Earth and Father Universe, and just just be that example. And so, but I think different people have ways. There's some people who really do a great job at, Ram Dass is a great example of it, right? Or Alan Watts, or Wayne Dyer. There's so many great people out there who have the gift of being able to, just share their truth like that in front of anybody, and it resonates. So, and that may be the case for all of us at some point, right? But it's just all different parts of our journey, I guess.
Well, that's an interesting point, because there are plenty of people who are going through this journey, but are never going to be perhaps the one to shout it in front of others, right?
Yeah.
Like, or get up on a stage about thousands of people to share their message.
Yeah, it's true. I think, in Western culture, there's this, there's sort of this dogmatic approach to faith in a lot of ways, which is, I have to convince you that I'm right, and you need to follow in my footsteps, or not even follow in my footsteps, but believe what I believe, or else there's something wrong with you, or that you're not right, or that, you're lacking in some way. And that's a real detriment. I think, I know it was a struggle for me when I first found this awakening process. I wanted everyone to believe what I believed, and I wanted everyone to experience what I was experiencing. But then there was the flip side to it too, which is where I felt so much lack, because I would see what other people were experiencing who were going through the awakening process that I wanted to experience, and I wasn't. And so I felt lack, like I wasn't good enough. And so, I think one of the lessons that we learned and you said it perfectly, Laura, when we go through this awakening process, is that we each have our own experience. We each have our own truth as we go through this. And I always like to share the metaphor of, every single one of us has a different set of fingerprints. None of us have the same fingerprints, and that's our physical body, but none of us have the same spiritual fingerprint either. Even though I shared we're all from the same source, it's too complicated for words, right? We can't really articulate the complexities with the language that we have. But with that being said, we definitely all have our own spiritual fingerprint, and we have to be comfortable in that, right? I mean, we have to be comfortable in our own spiritual skin and embrace this journey as it's given to us.
And I think that's so beautiful, because I feel so lucky to be 37 years old, and I know who I am. And I feel empowered to be that person in more settings than not. Do sometimes I put on different masks, or I know I'm acting a part? Sure. I'm aware when I do that. But I can come back to, okay, time out. Why were you doing that? And what were you trying to accomplish there? And I can step away and say, ooh, maybe let's unpack that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a real amazing place to be at, to be comfortable with yourself, to love yourself. And if we could all first love ourselves, I just think about how great would our world be. Because if we love ourselves, we'll love each other.
Yeah. I think, Ram Dass said it, and I love quoting Ram Dass just because he's my guru. I know I've shared this with you. But one of the things he shared in one of his teachings was the best thing that I can do to serve others is to work on myself. And the best thing that you can do to help others is to work on yourself. And there's such beautiful truth in that. And I know, Laura, you've worked a lot on yourself. I mean, you've gone through some serious healing work, and you've taken it seriously. And even before you started going through the awakening process, or at least before it really started to unfold quickly, because you've been going through it for a while.
Yes.
But, healing is such an important part of this experience, because essentially what you're saying, Laura, is, for the first time, you feel like you know who you are, and you didn't go out and find yourself. You went inside and found yourself. And,
correct.
And that is, I think, where, there's no quick, shouldn't say there's no quick way to awaken, because a lot of people just awaken in a snap of a finger and they're awakened. But part of that whole journey is the healing process, and removing all of those layers that remove us from our essence of who we really are. And that's the beautiful part and I don't like to use the word becoming, because it sounds like something we have to do, like it's something that we're it's like a job. But really, if we just listen to our souls and we heal and we work on ourselves, we become what we're supposed to, just by working on those things, right? We don't have to go out, and we don't have to go listen to a bunch of positive speakers, and we don't have to sign up for thousands of dollars of classes to learn, how to find our purpose in life. The purpose in our lives, who we are, live inside of us. So we just have to journey in and find that. And I think you've done such a great job. And when I say, I don't mean that in a, egotistical way or to boost your ego, but it's really been fun to watch. I mean, you've just been unfolding in such a beautiful way. It's really been something.
Oh, well, thank you. The same goes for you. It's such a joy to watch someone else as they be, right? Not becoming, but you're learning how to just be.
Yep.
And it almost like, does it take one to know one? I don't know if that's, but there's no even like right words other than I feel such, like my heart just warms even like listening to you talk right now, Adam, like I have such, like, I'm almost like crying because I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Happy for me, happy for you, happy for everyone listening, because you are in it.
Yeah, and Laura, the reality is we're all in it. I was just reading something on Facebook, one of the spiritual groups that I belong to, and there was a comment or a question that someone asked in the group of how do I share with other people what I believe so they can awaken, and and there was this conversation about, well, people just need to to start awakening. We need to start helping people awaken, and it almost kind of sounded like a Bible thumper to some extent. And I when I use that term, by no means am I applying that to all people of faith, but there's certain cultures in Western faiths where it's like, if you're not out beating the Bible and trying to convince people to believe in a certain thing, then you're not doing your job. And that, I think, that can really impact one's spiritual life to some extent, especially if if you end up believing something differently later and still trying to apply that logic to that new belief system that you have. And the reality of it is, we're all exactly where we're supposed to be in this journey of life. We're born into this incarnation with a journey that we've set for ourselves before we get here, if you believe that, and then we're just unfolding. And so there's so many beautiful lessons along the way, and not everybody is at the same place in their journey, but that doesn't mean that people aren't where they're supposed to be, right? And so there's a certain level of grace that we have to have for others. And when I say that, not I'm better than you, but I mean for ourselves too. Like we can look at other people and say, wow, I wish I was like Deepak Chopra. Look at where he's at in his walk, right? And it's like, well, look at where I am. I'm still trying to like get thoughts out of my head, right? So it's we're all right where we're supposed to be, and that's, I think, I agree. I don't know if you feel this way, Laura, but I feel that's like the most beautiful part of all of it, is just knowing that we're not supposed to be anywhere else besides where we are right now.
Exactly. And when you can finally come to terms with peace in that, hey, I can be patient, right? I have the beauty of, I don't know, I'll call it time, but there's this beautiful thing about just surrendering that there is a higher purpose. And the more that you can surrender to that, it's so interesting to see your life being guided in different ways. And like, for me, the moments that I've been so in my head and like, I think I know what's best for me, blah, 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 versus when I have said, okay, the universe, God, spirits, direct me, use me. I am yours. and completely said, here are my hands, here are my feet, use me, have been the most amazing experiences of my life.
Yeah, that's deep. I think you hit the nail on the head. That word surrender. It's it's so important. It really is. And it doesn't matter what faith whether you're a Christian or you're a Muslim or you're a New Ager, whatever it is that you believe. Surrendering is such an important part of spirituality, because otherwise it's not your spirit, right? If it's such a delicate dance, right? I mean, it's the ego and the soul, and we all have these egos, and we're supposed to have these egos. It's what keeps us alive. It's our fight or flight response. It's what we need, as a being in this human experience. But it's also really easy to let that ego lead our lives. And I think what you're saying, Laura, is, and it's almost not even learning how to surrender, because you can't really learn it. It's sort of like you just reach a point in your life, if it's meant to be, where it's like, okay, I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah, you reach a point and you said, no more. I will not either I will not tolerate this anymore, or something needs to change.
Absolutely.
And that's when you can have the breakthrough.
Yes. Yeah, we learned that I think I learned surrender the first time about 8 months after I started going through my awakening experience. And I went to a sacred plant medicine ceremony in Houston, Texas. And, everyone kept saying, when you experience this medicine, you need to surrender to it. And I said, okay, easy enough. And so I kept, I was sitting there on my meditation mat, waiting for the medicine ceremony to start. And I just kept saying, I'm going to surrender, 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 surrender. And that's what everyone told me to do. Just tell yourself that you're going to surrender. And I tried, I did it. And as I experienced the sacred medicine, it was unlike anything I have ever experienced before in my life. It was like my body started going through the death process. And not just my body, but all of me. And I was fighting it, and I was fighting it. And it was, and I said, okay. And I laid down and I just let it all go. I said, I can't control this anymore. It's too late. I've already taken of the brew, and there's no going back. And I just remember laying flat on my back and surrendering, and the most beautiful experience. It was the most beautiful experience. And when I opened my eyes again, I always say July 13th, 2019 or 2019 was my new birth, because I saw through new eyes for the first time. It was like being born again. And it was all because of surrender. If I kept fighting it, it wouldn't have been my time. But I don't think I could have learned that type of surrender without, at least not yet, without having that experience with medicine. And so, I share that because we all have different ways of coming to this realization. Laura, you didn't need medicine to realize how powerful surrender was. It was your time to realize that, and just through the normal natural process of living your day-to-day life. Where me, I was a little bit more hard-headed, and I need something a little stronger to bring me to that level of consciousness.
And that's what I was just going to ask. I was just going to ask, if someone knows that they need to surrender, what should they do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I've talked to a dear friend of mine, Ann Jarvis, who's been on the podcast many times, and she is the quintessential expert on surrender, at least in my eyes. And we had that same conversation, is that when it's your time to learn how to surrender, you'll surrender. And the more we try to surrender, the harder it becomes, because it's just like trying to clear your head of thoughts. You can't. Once you start trying to clear your mind of thoughts, more thoughts come in. And so it's really a matter of when it's time, it's time. It really is. There's no, at least that's my, there are other people I know who would have different points of view on that. So by no means am I saying that my point of view is the right one, but that's just my perspective on it. When it's time, it's time. I mean, think about it, Laura. How many times were you just fed up prior to learning how to surrender? And you're like, God, I can't do this anymore. But you pick it back up, right?
I keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the lesson, though, right? Like, I mean, because that's how we learn. That's how we learn a lesson. It's just
sure is.
Yeah,
it sure is. Yeah, because as I'm hearing you talk, my ego is coming in thinking, oh well, Laura, maybe you need to go get some plant medicine if you want to surrender even more. Oh, time out. When it's time, it's time. And I know that will, because I've listened to a couple of your episodes on, different medicine, and, that's something that I haven't explored yet. So I'm interested, but I haven't gone there yet. For me, what I'm really working on right now is when I am really, really stressed out, I find that the more pressure I put on myself to perform and to get things done, I actually need to spend more time in quiet meditation, because that allows me to have more breakthroughs from a strategy perspective and saying, okay, maybe all these things that I think are going to take me 40 hours to do, I can spend some time in meditation, and that might only be 5 hours. Right. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, how are you able to get more done in the outer world when you spend more time in the inner world?
As above, so below, right? I mean, our inside world is what paints our outside world, and so but that is really interesting. That is really interesting. I hadn't, and I think you're right. I mean, as it applies to medicine, medicine's not to learn how to surrender. It's obviously one thing that comes out of it, but as it pertains to medicine, people who are called to it will experience it. Not everybody's called to it. It's not something that, it's like one person can say, "Oh, you should do this. You should really do this," and then you do it. It's like you would know, you would be called to it if it was in your path. And so whatever lesson people get, everyone's lesson in medicine is different. But I love that. I love your perspective on meditation, and my experience with meditation, I found is just being with my thoughts and seeing them clearly instead of like being in it. Like being in my thoughts, if that makes sense. Like I think sometimes we tend to live in our thoughts, and wherever we place our concentration is where our awareness goes, and we just place all of our concentration in our thoughts, so we end up living our lives in a thought. Versus in meditation, you learn to sit a little bit further back and realize that, hey, I'm not these thoughts that I'm having. I'm the one who's experiencing or observing these thoughts, right? And so you learn to sit with those thoughts and say, okay, I see now what I'm thinking, but I'm not going to get involved with it. I'm just going to notice it and let it go. And when you can observe the thoughts that you have, then that's a really insightful practice, because then it's like, okay, now I really know what I need to work on, because I'm having way too many thoughts that look like this. So you know what I mean? Have you experienced that? I do.
So what was it Michael Singer? There's nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice of the mind. You are the one who hears it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Michael Singer, good old Michael Singer.
And thank you. You're the one that recommended The Untethered Soul to me, which is I've now reread a couple times because I love it so much. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. This may blow your mind even more. It did the first time. Actually, the first time I heard it, I stopped listening to it because it really affected me in a negative way. It sent me a little bit on a downward spiral because I was always of it's the observer, right? And then I heard this question which really bothered me, which was, well, who's that's observing the observer? And it's like, oh boy. Yeah, and how far back can you take that, right? So it's kind of like when you have two mirrors facing each other, and you look in the mirror and you see like a million different like dimensions of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that just gets me like
that one really messed with me. And then I heard the explanation of, well, we're all of those. So we're all of the observers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's even a bigger mind blow. So, but it's deep. It's really deep.
Honestly, this is the part of how to live life after experiencing awakening. You just continue to have more and more questions, and you're just curious, more and more curious, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have you heard of Adyashanti?
No.
So Adyashanti, he's got some really serious awakening material, and I became some of his stuff's still a little bit too intense for me, but this guy has just been blown open very powerfully. And but one of the things he says is, my job as a teacher isn't to give you the answers; it's to ask questions is to give you information that causes you to question your answers. And And I didn't articulate that verbatim, but that's essentially the gist of it, right? And I just found that so powerful. Like, the job of a teacher isn't to answer your questions, but it's to make you question your own answers. And I think that's kind of where you're going, Laura. I don't know that we ever get to the answers in this human life. I mean, you look outside and you look at a leaf and you see all the intricacies of that leaf, and you can't even explain that, right? It's a leaf, but like, it's not a leaf. That's just what we've labeled it. But we can't even explain, well, why does the leaf have these veins in it, and where do the veins come from, and how wide are they, and what purpose they serve? I mean, some people have those answers, but not everybody. But I'm just saying, there's just so much out there that's right in front of our eyes that we can't explain. Yet we're trying to find the deepest answers to the mysteries of the universe. And so I think there has to be some ambiguity there somewhere, right? Like, we have to be, and that's one thing we learn in business, right? And I think that's kind of what helps people in business a little bit sometimes. It's one of the few things that helps us in business as we go through the awakening is being able to operate in ambiguity, being able to say, I don't understand this, I can't explain it, I can't control it, but I'm just going to roll with it.
Mm-hmm. Even this whole season, I can't control it. I just roll with it. I figure out a way to get fine inside. And there's a lot of people who aren't fine inside.
Yeah.
And that's where like my heart goes. It's just, I want there to be more peace. Just more peace. Inner peace, outer peace. Peace. And I'd like to believe that the future holds good things, and I'm going to stay optimistic. But boy, Adam, we are sure being tested right now.
Yeah, we are. But I think this is also a lesson for us to recognize, the chaos and the beauty. You can't have one with the other. And it's almost like, if you think about the human body, if you look at the human body, it's this miraculous universe in itself, right? I mean, it's just the absolute beauty to behold. What a miracle life is, right? I mean, just think about how precious every heartbeat is. All it takes is for the heart to stop beating, and that's it. We take that for granted, right? I promise
Right.
I'm going somewhere with this. So... But if you actually look at what the body's doing on a regular basis, it's constantly in a war, right? I mean, we've got cells that are constantly dying. We have white blood cells, if I'm speaking to this correctly scientifically, killing off, bacteria. I'm probably not articulating it properly, but our body is constantly at war inside. But it's that chaos that keeps us alive. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in everything that's going on in the world. If we were able to see all of that and just raise it up a higher level and be able to see that this is just part of the organism, all this stuff that's happening is part of this living organism, and that doesn't make it any less painful to experience or mean that we just let it go and try not to fix things, right? But at the same time, there's a deep level of, I feel like there needs to be some level of appreciation for the complexities of it all, and knowing that there is a higher purpose, and knowing that the universe is in so much control, that God is in control. And I think that's part of the surrender aspect, right? Is just surrendering to that I will, control the things I can. And the things that I can't, I surrender to those things.
Surrender to them. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think it was Eckhart Tolle who says we as a culture like to make war with things, but when we make war with things, those things make war back with us, and that's why the war on drugs, all these wars that we've set up, the war on terrorism, all these wars, they never end, because you're essentially making war with something. It makes war with you back. Where if you approach it from a different perspective, and you do it in such a way that you transmute the anger and you transmute some of that stuff, you end up going a lot further.
Well, I want to say that I believe so much in fate, and I have a notebook up here with me in my room right now, and I just opened it to a random page. And do you know what page it is? It was randomly when I hadn't listened to the SpiritWoke podcast in a while, and you put something on Facebook, and I don't know how I ended up here, but I listened to it must have been a live cast that you did. And I literally have written down on my sheet of paper, Adam, inner purpose is to connect with our soul and love who we are, to reunite. Then we start to see our outside purpose manifestation. And I just think this is just a great way of coming full circle to there's so many things going on that if we can all take some time to do our inner work, to have time with our own thoughts and to do the work on us, then we're going to start to see our outside purpose or a manifestation in physical form. But I just think that's so beautiful, and maybe a great way to even kind of wrap up our conversation, because what I love about this is I'm so used to being the one that's asking the questions. I'm like, I want to interview you, Adam. you shouldn't interview me.
No, this is great. I love that. And if you want to talk even more about a synchronicity, that quote, that thought that you wrote down comes from Eckhart Tolle. So,
does it really?
From his book, A New Earth. And so, yeah, talk about how it all ties together. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I was trying not to get into mass consciousness, but that's where that comes in. There have been studies that have shown when people get in a group and pray together or meditate together, that things change. And our society makes fun of people who say, I send my thoughts and prayers. Well, thoughts and prayers aren't good enough. Well, it is if enough people are doing it.
Yes, it does. It does make a difference.
Yeah,
I firmly believe it does.
Well, I mean, it's provable. It's provable in science. But if you believe in now my mind is blanking because it's been a long day, and but there's the two particles that get split. It's the entanglement theory, Einstein's entanglement theory, and I'm trying to think of the scientific name for it, but. You take a couple of particles, or you take a particle and you split the particle in half, and you send the particles in two different directions. Well, when half of the split particles has one motion, the other half of its particle does the same thing, even though it may be miles and miles away. And we're all connected in a very similar way to that particle that split. Right? I mean, we're all part of the energy of the universe. We're part of its fabric. We're part of God. And so we're all connected. We're just split into these different human physical bodies, but we're all connected energetically. So if we raise our own vibration through what you were saying, Laura, working on ourselves, finding peace, that's going to manifest itself in other people, even if they're not paying attention, even if they're not working on it, because it's the law of entanglement. And it's Einstein's theory, and it's been proven over and over again in scientific experiments. So yes, I love that thought about the inner, finding your inner purpose and allowing it to find your outer purpose. And the more you go inside, the more peace you find. Other people find it too, because you're setting the way for them.
Oh, so good. Now, if you could just remember this all day, every day, we would just, be a very happy species.
Yes. and Laura, the science I was thinking of was quantum physics. That's where I was blanking. So
quantum physics.
Yes,
okay.
Quantum physics. But, well, Laura, holy moly, I can't believe we've been talking for 50 minutes already. It's just amazing how fast the time goes when we talk. I feel like we should have more of these. We should record more of these conversations because
I love it. I do.
Agreed.
You teach me so much, and I look forward to every single conversation we have, because there are ways that I don't necessarily want to use the word like ahead, but maybe you're experiencing your awakening in different ways than I have. And it's so fun to have someone else to quote unquote compare notes.
Well, I would say you inspire me, Laura, and we all teach each other in different ways. And I've learned so much from you, and I just appreciate where you are in your journey. And I really respect the life that you're living. And, I think you just do so much for this world that we're in. I don't even think you realize how much you do, and how much you give, and how much you contribute. And, I know you don't like to be labeled, but you work a full-time job. You're a mother of 4. You've got a variety of organizations that you lead. And in all of it, the most important thing to you is helping others. And if we go back to that Gandhi quote of "Let my life, right, be the example," that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. My life, or is it "My life is my message"?
Or "My life is my message"? Yes.
My life is my message.
And that's exactly what you're living. That's your truth.
Oh, thank you. Now I'm going to have to get all of my children to bed.
So on that note, friends, Laura, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for spending. I know it's hard to take time away from the family, so I really do appreciate you being so generous with us. And I know on behalf of the audience, thank you, thank you, thank you. Laura, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Oh, gosh.
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, probably. Find me, Laura King. And then Instagram, I'm Laura King MN.
Well, I'll tell you what, for those listening in, because I don't know who else I'd be speaking to, on the page where Laura's podcast is hosted, I'll provide links to her LinkedIn profile and to her Insta account so you guys can connect with her. And with that being said, again, Laura, many, many thanks. And until next time, folks, be well, be safe, and take care of each other.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, SpiritWoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke Podcast. Namaste.